Hey Gators and sports fans, get all your Gator talk, news, analysis, and opinions on the Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform or watch us on Facebook Live between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. every weekday. Pod Up, because we are Gator fans. So say it's great to be a Florida Gator.
Good morning and welcome to a Monday edition of Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's Monday. We'll recap the Gator game, SEC, NFL, all that good stuff with JC here in just a second. Second portion of the show will be joined by Scott Carter from FloridaGators.com, getting his thoughts on the Gators win over South Carolina and moving forward towards Texas A&M. But let's go straight to the Titan MR hotline. We're joined by JC. Good morning, JC. How are you?
Yeah, hey, man. Good weekend. Another good weekend of football as we get through and start October. I don't know. I mean, QB, it was a good weekend. I watched a lot of football, obviously. Went outside as much as I could with the weather. But the Florida game against South Carolina, I think, went pretty much as we thought it would. Florida with the offense, Kyle Trask with 4 touchdowns. I mean, we'll break it down, but it's just odd that, you had that stadium with about 15,000 fans in it, but it to me looked on television, at least in my observation, that there were more people in the stadium, and it certainly sounded like maybe there were more people. I don't know if that's audio engineering or if that's really how it was, but it was a good time for the team to get out there on the field and play on their home grass. And South Carolina played admirably. I thought they ran the ball fairly well at times, but they just didn't have the manpower to hold off Florida, I think.
Game went about how expected. Some guy on this show picked the exact score, by the way. I don't know who that guy is.
You don't know. I
don't know who he is. 38-24 is what I picked.
Yes, you did.
Thank goodness Colin, not that I win anything, but Colin Hill had a wide open guy on the last play.
He did.
I knew South Carolina would play us a little tougher offensively. Defensively, the thing I've been preaching all summer long, and I'm going to keep preaching it, is Florida has trouble on the defensive line. For whatever reason, we just that group is not up to standard. I don't know if it will be. The only time we can pressure is when we blitz. So we will see. It was a good win. Move on to Texas A&M, them coming off a loss to Alabama. But, offensively we played well. We had a couple of turnovers here and there, but that's going to happen. But, the thing that stood out to me the most was Kadarius Toney, who I've been very I've criticized him somewhat over his career because he's run backwards too much for me. But I have not seen that this year. He's put his foot in the ground and gone north. Only north. Right. He ain't going whole east and west and backwards. But he's becoming a good little receiver. And if he can keep improving and play the way he's playing, it's really going to help the Florida offense.
They got to have him. He went for 86 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown is exactly what you were talking about, running, north-south through the, 5 defenders, basically, who couldn't tackle him. So that was a really great play for his confidence for the team. I thought Pierce ran the ball fairly well. He averaged over 5 yards a carry, had a touchdown. I like the way he plays, man. I like the way he blocks in the backfield when he's asked to, and I like the way he runs the football. On defense, Elam with 8 tackles, and Sean Davis made his presence known. And it was good to see. And you could tell how badly they missed him in that first game because he had 7 tackles and was really knocking heads. So I like the way Sean Davis played on the defense. But 9 different players caught passes for Florida. 9 different players. And 5 different guys ran the ball. So the Gators are really spreading it out and getting a lot of guys involved in the offense. And that keeps defenses guessing. So I think, offensively right now you're looking at one of the 2 best, maybe the second or first best offense in the league. I'd say Alabama's right there, of course. So right now, Florida is connecting. I think the play calling is fantastic. I think Coach Mullen has Kyle Trask dialed in, and I think even after the game, Trask was somewhat disappointed with some of the output. But you get 38 points and you win football games, and usually you win football games. And I think that's the thing I take away from this game, is that so many different players contributed to producing on the offensive side. And defense, I think, played better. I certainly agree with you that there are some things they have to patch up and get better at, but I thought they played better. Obviously, South Carolina's offense is much more deliberate than Mississippi's offense. And, I can't understand why it takes South Carolina 8 minutes when there's only 9 minutes left in the game to try to score a touchdown. But that's just the way South Carolina runs their offense. And that's Mike Bobo's offense is nothing like Lane Kiffin's. So Florida, I think, responded better to that type of offense. But you're right. They have some things to get better at, and they better, because Texas A&M is going to pressure them on Saturday.
Yeah, A&M will be a little tougher test on the road. But you mentioned spreading the ball around. That's what Florida does, because I don't think a lot of people understand. Our starting 3 receivers are Tony, Copeland, and Grimes. But we alternate the receiver group every series. People don't understand that.
Yeah.
That's why the ball is spread around so much, because they keep them very fresh, but they give multiple people opportunities to play. So it's not like the same. After the first series, Tony and those guys are not going in series 2. It's going to be the number 2s, and they just alternate back and forth. So that's why the ball is going to be spread around like that all year long. Defensively, A&M will cause some problems for us because of Kellen Mond, although he has not gotten any better in his 4 years, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But he has a running capabilities that can hurt us. They got some decent running backs, but again, our defensive line scares me to death.
Well, you just got to hope that each week things get a little bit better, if that's possible.
But I didn't. But your coach speak. Game 1 to game 2, I didn't see any. It was the same. They got pushed. South Carolina, for the most part, they were running it right down our throat.
Yeah.
The only time we can pressure the quarterback in a passing situation is blitz only, and then we have to run blitz sometimes to stuff and maybe get a tackle for loss. So, it's a concern, because when we play, and I don't know which teams. I mean, LSU's going to come in here and throw it all around the ballpark. We'll see what A&M does, but that's my biggest concern. It has been all year long.
Well, and the Georgia game is looming, of course. So I agree with you. I think those 3 schools give Florida some challenges to address, and that's where you're going to find out whether or not you have what it takes to be a championship type team. But you're 2-0 right now, and you've scored a lot of points, and I think they played a little better on defense, but I hear you. I think they could get much better. Obviously, I think they're going to have to get better, and certainly, around the league, when you look at it, specifically in the East, there's only one team I think that challenges Florida. There's another team that could play, stay probably with Florida at some point. I think Tennessee's better than South Carolina. I think they showed that, but not much better. So it's Georgia. It's Georgia and Florida in the East, and over there in the West right now, it's Alabama's to lose. I mean, we saw what Auburn was all about. Clearly overrated on offense and not very dangerous. And LSU is going to be a tough matchup for Alabama, but Alabama's going to score on them. So I don't know. I think it's a 1-horse race out west, and I think it's a 2-team monster in the East, and there's some other ones in the middle. There were some upsets, though, QB. I think the theme of the weekend, this weekend, was the upset bug. The upset bug bit Mississippi State. Inexplicably, some of the play calling I couldn't understand in the fourth quarter. The upset bug bit Oklahoma. Thank you, right here. Iowa State always beats them, so I don't really think it's much of an upset. Mississippi going up to Lexington. How about Mississippi, right? I mean, Lane Kiffin I think he's a spectacular play caller. And
did you watch that game, JC?
I did. Kentucky,
Kentucky. Here's the thing. I am so convinced now that I'm 50 and it's taken me this long. I am so convinced that defensive-minded head coaches lose more games they should not lose, because Kentucky dominated that game. Turnovers
and lost.
Killed them. They ran for over 400 yards. When is the last time a team ran for over 400 yards and lost? Kentucky and their quarterback play is horrible. It blows my mind. But speaking of upsets, so listen to this tweet. let's take a moment to process the fact that Mississippi State went from a road win against the defending national champs to losing at home to a team without a conference win in 1,071 days.
Yeah. Well,
the last time. Do you know the last? Hang on, JC. You know the last time Arkansas won an SEC game, who their coach was?
It was. If I had a minute to think about it, I could remember. But who was it?
Brett Bielema.
Brett Bielema. Well, yeah. I mean, he was the coach before Chad Morris, so that makes sense. Certainly, I don't know why I didn't.
But you're looking at over 3 years.
I know. Well, it's amazing. I think Arkansas obviously coached better. I mean, they competed with Georgia for a half, and look, Mississippi State I think Mississippi State did exactly what we were saying was their biggest threat, and their biggest threat was themselves. Reading the newspapers, watching the TVs, thinking that they were going to just roll through the West and get that head-to-head with Alabama to see who goes to Atlanta or to play in the championship game. And that's just not the way it works in this conference, man. But Arkansas, Felipe Frace, let's hear it for Felipe. He's 2-0 in Starkville. And listen, I think, Mike Leach is a great offensive mind. I mean, he really is. He's exciting and all this, but I just can't understand some of these calls down there when the game is on the line and you have 6 inches to get a first down and you're taking a shotgun snap and throwing it.
Well,
I don't care. Even though some of their passes are like runs, it's still a ball going in the air, and that's dangerous at times.
But they don't line up under center ever. That's his philosophy.
They don't. I know they don't. And you know what? It probably cost them a first down and possibly a game. But listen, they couldn't score on Arkansas, so that wasn't just those calls at the end of the game that cost them. It was the whole game, obviously. And Arkansas played hard, man. They just looked more physical and more in tune with what I think Pittman's trying to coach them. And I like what I saw out of Arkansas, frankly. I know it's up and down every week, right? But they weren't supposed to win that game. They were a 17-point underdog. NC State was a 14-point underdog. They won. TCU was an 11-point underdog. They won. Iowa State and Mississippi were high single-digit underdogs, and they won. So upsets were the theme of the weekend for me, and I don't know if you can say Iowa State beating Oklahoma is an upset anymore. Oklahoma is the one school. Oklahoma QB is the one school that has gotten the benefit of the doubt more than any other school since we've gotten into the playoff era. And I'm finally glad we can put them to bed and not talk about them for the duration of this season of getting into the playoffs. And frankly, Oklahoma State being the best chance the Big 12 has to get into a playoff doesn't bode very well for the Big 12 because that's the only team that's unbeaten in that league, and they'll probably have 2 or 3 losses. So the Big 12 is going to be out of it. The Pac-12 is out of it. We've already talked about this. It's going to be, like you said, likely Ohio State, who's going to run the table in the Big 10, maybe. It's going to likely be Clemson, who will run the 10 in the ACC, and then 2 SEC teams. And I don't know why anybody talks about anything else or anybody else, because that's what's going to happen.
Refresh your vehicle and your brand with a vehicle wrap from Wrap Spot. October is your lucky month at Wrap Spot. Mention promo code Shane and receive 13% off your vehicle wrap. Speaking with JC here. Okay, let's talk about the Georgia Bulldog. Well, first of all, Auburn's going to lose a bunch of games this year. They are not very good. Kentucky outplayed them. Kentucky should have won that game, but didn't. But I've seen enough of Bo Nix. He can't play. He just runs around. I feel like I'm watching a kid play Pop Warner football. He just runs around, runs out of the pocket for no reason. But Georgia is so nasty on defense. It's scary. Best defense in the country, hands down.
I don't argue with that. I mean, Kirby has always been a great D coordinator, and some of those great Alabama defenses. Obviously, Kirby Smart was their coach, and he's got it, man. He's the best defensive coach in the country, and certainly, I think he has shown that Georgia can. They will be in every game they play, and it will be close every game they play. And certainly they will blow out their share of teams as well. So yeah, they're really good, man. They're really good on defense. Everybody's talking about that matchup with Florida, defense versus offense, when we get to that game. But that's so far down the road. We'll have to see how things transpire. But because things change so quickly, and there's so much unpredictability from week to week with everything that's going on off the field as well as practicing and so forth. So I think. You're right. Georgia's defense is nasty. Auburn will lose 3 or 4 games. They'll be the typical Auburn Tigers. They're 7 wins, 8-win team. That's what they are. And then they have a big game where they shock Alabama. But they're not going to beat Alabama this year. And they're not going to probably beat LSU this year either. And you're looking at 3 or 4 losses.
Yep. I wanted to bring up Tennessee. Tennessee has the longest winning streak in the country. I do agree Tennessee is better than they've been. Tennessee has the strength of Tennessee's team is their offensive line. And that concerns me when we play them at the end of the year, but we'll have to worry about it then.
That's a ways off.
Okay, I'm going to tell you the teams Tennessee's beat. You tell me if you really buy into the Big Orange. They beat South Carolina.
Okay.
They beat UAB. They beat Kentucky. They beat Missouri. They beat Vanderbilt. They beat Indiana in a bowl game. They beat South Carolina again, and they beat Missouri again. Who in the hell have they beaten that even has a winning record?
Well, Indiana did, and certainly they are. If you seem to forget, QB, that literally 1 year ago you called them the worst team you have ever seen walk into games.
I said they've improved, but that winning streak means nothing.
Well, it does mean a lot to them. It means a lot to them because it means their program is off the doormat, QB. When you put together wins, players start believing. You know this. And team psychology means a lot because there's a lot of good players on that roster. They didn't just come out of high school and hope to play college football. They were recruited, and they weren't just recruited by Tennessee either. So they got scholarship athletes on that roster, and they're not bad. They're not bad. They're the third team right now in the SEC, and they will give Florida fits in the cold weather in Knoxville, assuming that both teams are intact when they play. But I agree with you. I think it's Florida's and Georgia's to lose in the East. But Tennessee is clearly the third best team in the East, and they will give some teams problems. I think they will play hard. And their coach, they have bought into him, man. They like Pruitt. They bought in. Look, I get it. They don't play the great team, but you don't have on your schedule. You got to play who's on your schedule, right? So they
did.
Have Notre Dame.
Did. They played Florida. They played Alabama. They played who else did they play? They can't beat the good teams. Is my point.
How many teams beat Florida, Alabama, Georgia in the last 2 years, QB? How many?
Not many, but my point is
that's right.
Tennessee is going to get taken out behind the woodshed against Georgia. You watch.
Well, they're going to see that this weekend. They're a 14-point underdog, but I'll say this. I think they have shown us that as a program, they are on the right trajectory to get off the floor and be competitive with Florida and Georgia again, because we all remember there were plenty of days when they smacked Georgia and Florida. So they can play with those schools. Eventually, they'll get there. But it takes some time when you're that bad. And that's what Florida State's undergoing right now. They are so bad, it's going to take a couple of years to get back, but they will. Tennessee was no different. And now they're on the right trajectory. And I think to say otherwise is wrong.
Well, they've improved. I'm going to leave it at that till they do something. I don't watch them and go, man, this team can compete. I don't see that at all.
Again,
so JC,
that was a team that you said was the worst team that came in the game a year ago. 1 year ago. That's not much time, QB. That's one recruiting class. Big deal. Give them a few years. They'll be back. I'm telling you.
All right. And I also said Ole Miss has the worst Division I defense I've ever seen, and I still stand by that. They can't stop you running the football.
No, they're bad. They're bad. They're real bad.
We just got a text from Joe. Joe says UCF also got upset, which I was not surprised. They lost to Tulsa last year. I don't think people realize that. Tulsa's beaten them like 2 out of the last 3 years.
That's right. UCF's the best team in Orlando. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I don't even waste my time with UCF.
Mike Bianchi and these guys, they are so desperate for attention down there in Orlando because Orlando is not a college football town, and it never has been, and it never will be. But they are starving for attention down there, and UCF is the best thing they've got to scream from the rooftops. But we don't have to hear it anymore because they've lost now. And they're tough. They're good. They'd be a great team for Florida to play, I think. I think they should play Florida. I really think Florida should play them. But at any rate, I think UCF is UCF, and I've always thought that even when they beat Auburn in a 12 o'clock game in Atlanta, when the Auburn Tigers couldn't have cared less where they were that day. So whatever, go scream your UCF crap if you want to. Bianchi and Dan Le Batard made the biggest jerks of themselves when they said that was the national championship team the year they went undefeated. It was so stupid. I couldn't.
Bianchi's a Gator, JC.
I know, but he loves his Central Florida Knights because they need attention down there because Orlando is not a college football city, and neither is Fort Lauderdale. And those two guys, that's where they were. Miami. Whatever.
JC, give us an update on the Peachland Dentistry, JC, and the QB picks.
All right, so QB goes a spectacular 7-3. with his Buffalo Bills. That was the NFL pick of the week. Game of the week was Buffalo. They beat the Vegas Raiders by 7. They were laying 3. I had Buffalo as well. Tonight you've got Kansas City. I have New England, but New England, I mean, come on. They don't have their quarterback. They had to fly 2 planes to get there because of the incubation period of this coronavirus.
Hang on a second. Does it matter that the team flies on 1 plane or 2 planes? Does that matter?
It leads to the fact that this team has had a lot of distractions. And then you have Cam Newton, who has been really the biggest story on the team, not being able to play. But in college football, you did well. You went 6-3. I went 5-4. The difference games that we had was that you had Missouri to cover against Tennessee. I had Tennessee, and Tennessee covered. But you also had West Virginia at home, and they won in double overtime over Baylor, and I had Baylor. And then for some unknown reason, I thought Texas A&M could cover the 17.5 against Alabama, and you had Alabama covering that game. And they could have scored as many points as they wanted to, and they probably did.
You're going to like what I'm getting ready to say here, because I've spoken with a couple of analysts in the last couple of days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The best, and again, I'm taking my orange and blue glasses off, so I don't want a bunch of comments on here. My eyes have told me, and just watching what I've seen on TV, Alabama has the best offense in the country. It's crazy how good they are right now.
How can you argue that with those receivers who are Sunday players? The quarterback has just done great. The offensive line is massive, and they do well. They can run the football with Harris. I mean, you're right. There's everything that's there right now. If they stay healthy, it's going to be hard to deal with them.
Yeah, they're explosive. I think they're more explosive now than they ever were under Tua. I really do.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you have these players around you, Mac Jones is the kind of guy who, I think, like a lot of players, needs to have some guys around him that can really turn a play that might just go for 20 or 25 yards into a touchdown. And he's got those guys on the outside, but he makes good passes. The first touchdown pass he threw in that game with Texas A&M was just a go route where the wide receiver just outran the defender, and Mac Jones recognized that at the line of scrimmage and threw a ball on the dead run to a guy who runs a 4.3. And those are the kind of passes that I think scouts look at. And you probably saw it. It was just a well-designed play, but it was executed perfectly. And he's got receivers who, again, could make him look really good on the stat sheet, because once they catch the ball, it's trouble. It's trouble.
Well, that's pretty much every quarterback.
Well,
receivers make quarterbacks look pretty good.
Well, they do help. Yeah. They really do. I mean, but look, Florida, you got Tony coming out and emerging. You've got Grimes, who's a relatively new player. Trask has done a lot of this with a lot of different guys. So Trask has, in my mind, really shown us more in the last year and a half than anybody could have hoped for, and who is now a household name in this country, Kyle Trask. He wasn't not very long ago, a year ago maybe, but now he is, and people everywhere know who he is because of how well he's played. And yeah, he's had some good players around him, but I wouldn't say he's had those guys. And so certainly that Alabama has. So certainly he's got some players, and they're starting to emerge. But he's done a lot just because he's really good.
That's why I love his story, and I love Stetson Bennett's story, because Trask had one Division I offer, Florida,
I know,
from McElwain and Nussmeier. His only other offer was to Division III Dallas Baptist. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same way with Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
My point is, the 5-star, the 4-star, all that stuff means absolutely nothing, whether you can play football or not. I've seen plenty of 5-star guys on the Gator roster. I've seen 5-star guys on other rosters that don't pan out. But just because you don't have those stars does not mean you can't play. And Trask is proving that, and Stetson Bennett's proving it.
Well, it's good. It's good to see them play that way. And I don't know. I think JT Daniels is probably sitting there thinking to himself, here I am across the country from where I was, and I might not play. And if you're Georgia, would you sit him? No. That's part of college football. And look at this kid Bennett. I mean, he knows how to play, but he's limited in certain things. But
what's he limited in? What's he limited in?
Well, his size, I think, is a limitation. But
just because he's a smaller 5'10" kid doesn't mean he can't play the position. The dude freaking shredded Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, he played great. He played great. But I think if he was so good, he would have started. All right.
That's not true. That is not true.
Okay.
Here's the reason, right. JC, because he was not on scholarship. When you go to a Division I program, walk-ons aren't even considered to go on the depth chart. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so all he did was he went over and did his job on scout team, tore it up. They had a couple of injuries. The kid transferred, went and played JUCO ball, came back, and Kirby was smart by putting him in the game, or they lose to Arkansas.
Kirby was smart by putting him on the airplane, QB. And the fact of the matter is that
Kirby he had to go on
him against Arkansas.
He had to go on the airplane because they didn't have enough players at that position.
Okay, that's fine. But that if let's say Daniels was healthy or would have played, Daniels probably would have been the first guy Kirby went to if he didn't put Stetson on the airplane.
Exactly.
Because of all the things you said. Right.
But the point I'm trying to make is coaches, a lot of times they get enamored with size, arm strength, stars. Yeah. But sometimes the dudes that don't have all that, they're a little bit better than those superstars.
Well, right. And look, I'm going to say this, and to me, this is the truth, because this is what happened. And basically, it's not revisionist history. This is what happened. Kirby Smart started another player in that first game because that's the player he thought had the best chance to help them win that game against Arkansas. Same thing with Dan Mullen. He started Felipe Franks against Kentucky because that was the best player he thought that Florida had to win that game. And guess what happened? Both those guys were out of the game by halftime and got bailed out by the dudes that they didn't think were the best players at that position. And you're not going to sit here and tell me that with all the practices they've gone through and everything else they've done, that those kids who ended up playing and became better should have started in the first place. Otherwise, they would have, but they didn't.
Again, you're not listening to me. I agree with what you just said, but my point is Kyle Trask was not – Kyle Trask had no stars. Stetson Bennett had no stars. So the coaches are going to play the highly recruited guys. They're going to give them the first opportunity, I should say.
Well, okay, that's the difference right there, isn't it? They got the first opportunity because they had – in the coach's mind, those were the players that gave them the best chance to win the game. You've already said that it only matters on who the best players are that's going to play. And the best players turned out to be the guys that didn't start in those games. And that's fine. But that's how you learn even as a coach.
No, I agree. But my point is coaches sometimes get enamored. Right. They get enamored with stuff that the people that give these stars to these kids instead of let the kid go play and let me see what he can do.
It's a cottage industry, this recruiting thing. You know, we do make a big deal out of it, and it is important. I mean, without recruiting, you don't have, what you have. But no, I hear you. I mean, some of these kids really take advantage of their opportunities much better than others do. And certainly in this case, Kyle Trask and Stetson Bennett are two great examples of those kids that once they got a chance, never let that opportunity go to waste and haven't, seen. I mean, they've been in the game ever since then, and they're not coming out. So that's great, and that's a great story for both those kids. It doesn't always work out that way, but in this case, it certainly did. And I'm glad that these coaches have they make these adjustments when they see in the game who gives them the best chance to win. You used to tell me a long time ago, and I used to know this, Danny Werfel wasn't a great practice player, but man, you threw him in the game on Saturday, and he lit it up. So that's just the way it is sometimes.
All right, JC, we got to run. We got Scott Carter waiting. Appreciate it,
man. All
right,
sounds good.
At Center State Bank, we put business first. We are the largest community bank in the state of Florida. Understand that small businesses need a community business partner that they can rely on. Center State has 5 convenient Alachua County locations to serve you better. Center State Bank, member FDIC. Going to take our first time out. When we come back, we'll be joined by FloridaGators.com senior writer Scott Carter. You're watching and listening to Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios.
Hey Gator Nation, this is your former head ball coach Steve Spurrier. Check out our show Inside the Huddle with Shane Matthews and Steve Russell every Tuesday during football season on 8:50 a.m. and 98.1 FM WRUF at 10 o'clock a.m.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility.
Area Rug Masters, your number one choice in Gainesville for all your rug cleaning services.
Meldon Law, where you matter most. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte.
Celebration Point Town Center, Center State Bank, Chris Doring Mortgage. Some of our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Darlene Wiebe Realtor, Caldwell Banker MM Parish, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Rap Spot, Okido America, Gators Dockside, Radware, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, TB Financial, Meadowbrook Golf Course, Dar Shakow Insurance.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Celebration Points, where the Gators come to celebrate, with premium brands like Bass Pro Shop, Tommy Hilfiger, Hotel Indigo, Nike, Medici's, Regal Cinemas, and coming spring of 2021, the HBC's new restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Visor's Rooftop Bar. We will see you at Celebration Point, where the Gators come to celebrate. We're now going to go back to the Titan MR hotline, and we're joined by FloridaGators.com senior writer, Scott Carter. Good morning, Scott. How are you?
Hey, doing well, Shane. Good morning to you. And got the home opener out of the way, so it was good to see the Gators get another win. And it was a different atmosphere for everybody, obviously.
Yeah, it was very bizarre, Scott. I'll tell you, I have to go be on campus 4 hours before kickoff due to a little pregame radio show I do with Steve Russell. And it was so weird driving into campus and there wasn't a person or a car anywhere on campus. Usually there's tents set up or some cars rolling in, even 4 hours before, but there was nothing. It was just very, very bizarre game day, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to be different, Shane, but until you kind of get there and just see all the familiar places minus the people, it kind of hit home. I was the same way. I wasn't there quite as early as you are, but I was there about 2.5, 3 hours before kickoff, and easy drive in, easy park, hardly anybody outside the stadium. And then I did walk around, not long before kickoff just to see if it had changed. And of course there were more people out, but there was no Gator walk, no tailgating. It was just kind of a muted game day. And as we talked, I think last week, I mean, this year, the star of this show is kind of what takes place in those 3.5, 4 hours on the field. So if that's your thing, this is your year. But if you just like to tailgate and meet up with old friends, it's going to be different for you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's so strange. But let's talk a little bit about the game. Obviously, Florida wins a good one, 38-24. Your thoughts? I thought offensively they came out swinging as usual. Thought Kyle was on target for the most part. Just your initial thoughts on how the offense played.
Yeah, I thought the offense was fine. I mean, anytime you score 38 points, you're doing something right. The first half, we saw a lot of what we saw against Ole Miss with the two Kyles coming out and doing their thing, and then we saw a big play by Kadarius Toney in the third quarter. Trent Whittemore, first touchdown catch, and I thought obviously in the second half, the game situation favored South Carolina. I mean, you look at the stats. I mean, they had 25 first downs and they kept the ball almost 37 minutes. So they owned time of possession, and it kind of muddled the game a lot because the Gators still finished with more total yards. It was just a weird game in that area. But offensively, I mean, afterward, Dan Mullins said, he thought they could have played sharper. Obviously, in the second half, he's not going to be happy with the way South Carolina was able to keep the ball and keep his offense off the field. But I think overall, I mean, I don't see any really major concerns for the Gators offense going into the Texas A&M game other than just being more consistent, staying out there and not allowing you're not forcing your defense to stay on the field so long.
Were you a little surprised at the zone read that they call when Trask fumbled?
I mean, yeah, it was it was something you didn't expect. It was just one of those situations that, I can't remember if Mullen was asked specifically after the game about that, but it was just a little unusual maybe compared to what we become accustomed to seeing in those situations. And of course it cost. I mean, it did lead to some points and maybe played a role in that disruption of rhythm for the offense. I mean, they got it back and they scored after that, but it gave South Carolina the momentum.
We got a text here on the Titan MR hotline from Rick. Rick wants to know, was Emory Jones injured?
Yeah, well, Emory Jones had a splint on his hand if you're watching the ESPN game, so evidently something's going on there. Obviously, we know Dan Mullen, his approach to injuries in 2020, he said he's not going to talk about it, so there's going to be more guessing this year, I think, with a lot of fans and media. I think probably a lot of that has to do with the COVID and if these guys want to let people know on their social media accounts or whatever that they're out for COVID, you can't. That's free for everybody to do. But as far as I think the team standpoint, they're just going to, kind of try to keep it in house and give an unavailable list. And Emory was not on the unavailable list before the game, but I think TV clearly showed he had a splint on his right hand. I don't know the extent of that or if it's something that's lingering, but hopefully it's nothing too serious where he's going to miss a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and I'll say this. He wouldn't be dressed out if he wasn't available to play either. There's no reason they're just going to dress somebody. And what's amazing to me, Scott, is, and you've been covering sports a long time, and I'm now, I don't really consider myself covering sports. We just talk sports, but it's so funny to me. And it's not just at Florida, it's every school. More people worry about the backup quarterback than I can ever remember. You know what I mean?
No, it's true. I've never understood that either, just even as a fan of sports. I mean, I really care about what happens on the field and performances, but I don't tend to worry about who's not playing as much. If they play, they play. And I understand, it's just the times we live in, and it's 24/7 now, so during the week, basically every guy on the roster, you have time to dissect them if you really want to, and there's a lot of that going on. But again, I'm like you; it's just a different climate compared to what I prefer, what I'm accustomed to is just a fan looking at things.
At Chris Doring Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. We're speaking with Scott Carter on the Titan MR hotline. All right, Scott, so let's move over to the defense side of the ball. I think we're all feel pretty comfortable with our offense. Got multiple receivers to throw to. I knew the receiver core was really deep, but I've been preaching all summer long. I'm concerned about the defensive line. Maybe played a little bit better. I'm not sure. I don't watch the tape, but just from watching in the stands and watching the TV copy, we just aren't getting the push like I would like. Your thoughts on the defensive line?
Yeah, I think there's got to be some improvement there because, South Carolina, Colin Hill dropped back, 47 times, 4 sacks. One of them, I remember he was kind of a free sack. He just fell to the ground. I mean, but 47 times, I don't recall just tremendous consistent pressure there. So there hasn't been a lot of flash plays up front. And that in Todd Grantham's defense, I mean, that's such a vital part of his scheme is to create that pressure and to create havoc. And they're going to have that. They got Jeremiah Moon back last week. I'm like you. I don't watch the film. I can't sit here and say everything he did right or wrong, but you want to hear his name called more than it was. Brandon Cox Jr., he's the other guy there that you got to get more involved. Obviously, Kyrie Campbell in the middle still didn't play. Javon Dexter, we've seen him here and there. I thought the best play, the hit that everybody remembered was Andrew Chatfield's sack of Hill. That was one that stood out. But you've got to be able to do that more consistently, and that's also going to help the secondary. And everything else on the defense. And I do think that is going to be an emphasis, obviously, for this defense moving forward, because I don't think it's to where they want it right now.
No doubt about it. In the secondary, still, I know we gave up a bunch of yards. It's hard to cover guys, especially in today's football, if you're not pressuring the quarterback. It was good to see Sean Davis back. I thought he flew around and made some plays.
Yeah, he did. He showed up a few times. I think he led the team in tackles with 8. Made some plays, and his physical presence is it's very important back there. He's a guy that the other players, I think, thrive off just because of his toughness and his energy. I thought Kaiir Elam played a good game. I mean, he had some good plays in the first half. I think the longer they were out there on the field, it's going to expose everybody in the secondary. The more you're thrown at, you're going to give up some plays. I think that happened, but I think Elam was solid. I thought, going back up front there again, Zach Carter, I thought probably was the best defensive lineman in the game for the Gators, but he's going to have some help. And you're right, the secondary, getting Davis back was big. Obviously, Brad Stewart is expected to come back at some point. That will help. And it's just again, like we talked a little bit last week, Shane, it's still that offense is ahead of the defense. Maybe not as much in Florida's case this weekend because, again, even though they were out there on the field, South Carolina ran 83 plays compared to Florida's 53. So that shows you some disparity there that Florida will want to cut down at Texas A&M. But I still think if you look across, the offenses are still ahead of defenses. Florida's defense, I thought, caught up some this week, but there's still areas that they certainly have to tighten up.
Yeah. So, Scott, we got a bunch of text here, or not text, but Facebook Live comments brought to you by Melton Law Where You Matter Most. A lot of it is about the defense. No Stewart, no Campbell. Defensively, third down zone coverage has burned us. I'm a firm believer now that it is so hard to play defense in today's football. And I said this on my show all last week after watching a week of SEC ball. SEC used to be known for their defense, and I think Georgia's defense is outstanding, but you just can't stop people nowadays. Just with the rules favor the offense, and there's just so many great athletes on the offensive side of the ball making plays in space, it's hard to tackle them.
Yeah, I mean, the people who are in charge of the game at the NFL level and college level, I mean, they know that offense is what most fans enjoy more. I think the game is tailored to offensive now. So if you're an offensive coach or a dynamic offensive player, this is your era. Defensive coordinators obviously don't like some of the rules right now, but I think you're just going to see it play out, this strange season that we're in, that the defenses might not be as crisp until later in the year. I know Gator fans are looking at their defense in the first couple of games. I mean, the first performance against Ole Miss, I mean, it was not good when you give up 613 yards. But really, I thought the game Saturday, Shane, was more about just situational football. I mean, there were just some things, that South Carolina did that caused the flow of the game to go the way it did. I mean, that fourth quarter drive was a perfect example. I mean, they kept the ball forever. They got some yards on the drive, but guess what? They got no points. And I mean, that's the goal at the end of every drive if you're a defensive guy. So, but I'm like you, the game is tailored for offenses right now, and you're going to see some defenses giving up more yards and more points than we're probably accustomed to. But in Florida's case, I do expect it to continue to get better. I think you hit on it earlier. To me, the defensive line is where once that gets better, I think you'll see some things change.
You brought up a good point, that long drive South Carolina had, and just watching how Kentucky has blown. I feel like Kentucky should be 2-0. They outplayed Auburn, should have won that game. They dominated Ole Miss, but turnovers and just dumb things cost the game. I just feel like these defensive-minded head coaches are playing scared and playing not to lose, kind of. You know what I'm saying? It's just so weird to me how Kentucky can lose those two games, and then we all know Muschamp is a defensive-minded guy, but it just kind of shows you that long drive you're down 2 scores, but it just takes forever, and then they get no points out of it. I don't know if I'd hire a defensive head coach if I was making a hire somewhere.
No, I agree with you there. I was having this talk with my colleague Chris Harry in the press box the other day about Muschamp, because the game played out a lot like we had seen some Florida games when he was head coach at Florida. I think at one point they were down. Gosh, I don't remember the score exactly here when they kicked the field goal. They were down by 31-14, and they get down. They kick a field goal down 38-14, and they kick a field goal late in the third quarter on 4th and 2. And we're like, man, I mean, don't you just have to go for it there? And, that's just the nature of defensive coordinators are going to play by the book more than your offensive coaches. And they're going to look for the turnovers and the time of possession. And South Carolina won the time of possession the other day. They won the turnover battle, but yet they lost by 14 points. So it's a different game. I'm like you. I think if I'm an AD or an NFL GM and I'm looking to hire a coach, I'm going offense. And you want to hire a good defensive coordinator, but this is the game that's tailored for the offenses. And if you're a cloud, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, Shane? If you're that kind of guy, you might want to go ahead and just kind of retire.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's impossible to play defense and win that way these days. Last thing for you, Scott, and we appreciate you joining the program. Looking forward to the Aggies, how do you think we match up against them?
I like the matchup. I think, Gators are going to match up well with anybody this year. I think, obviously, Texas A&M gave up 52 points to Alabama. So Florida's offense being what we've seen the first 2 weeks, I think they have to feel pretty confident to be able to move the ball on the road against Texas A&M. It's another noon game, so the Gators have these noon games down now. But I like the matchup, and it's obviously a matchup that, Jimbo Fisher's gotten the best of Florida in his career when he was at Florida State, but he's under some fire out there. I was looking it up yesterday. He's 18-10 in his first 28 games at Texas A&M. Dan Mullen's 23-5 in his first 28 games at Florida. So it's an interesting contrast. The first time they've obviously faced each other in their current jobs, and I think Florida matches up well. I mean, they're going to have to. Again, Texas A&M can move the ball, and Jimbo Fisher is an excellent offensive coach. I don't expect them to go out there and shut the Aggies offense down, but I like the way Florida can perhaps outscore them if needed and go out there and get a win.
Before we let you go, just talking about SEC football, anything stand out? Were you surprised at Mississippi State going down, and were you surprised at how Georgia handled Auburn?
I'm not so surprised that Georgia. I mean, they're very good, and they didn't play great that first week, even though they beat Arkansas. But they really handled Auburn. I thought they played well. I think that was the Georgia team that fans expect, media expects, and I think the Gators expect to see over in Jacksonville later this season. So I'm just, looking at Florida can continue to do what it's doing, and Georgia continues to take care of business. What a matchup that could possibly be later in the year. And I was glad to see Felipe Franks go out to Arkansas. That was a big win for Arkansas against Mississippi State. They'd lost 20 SEC games in a row. And Felipe gets a win against Mike Leach, who obviously gained a lot of headlines his first week. So it just shows you this is going to be one of those years that we're going to see some crazy stuff. We saw it week 1. We saw it again week 2. And obviously you touched on the Kentucky Ole Miss game. What a wacky affair that was. So I think we're going to just see consistent craziness is about the best way I can put it, Shane.
Yeah. I got one more thing for you. I don't know if you heard me and JC before you came on, but today's world, all these 5-star quarterbacks here, 5-star quarterbacks there, it's kind of amazing to me when you look at, depending on what poll you're looking at, the number 3 and the number 4 team in the country have a guy who had one Division I offer to Florida. His only other offer was Dallas Baptist. And then you got a kid who was a walk-on for 3 years at Georgia, now on scholarship, Stetson Bennett. leading those two programs. It's kind of amazing in today's football.
Nah, it definitely is, and it just goes to show you that there is no scientific formula to any of this. And Kyle Trask's story has been told and retold, and it's going to get told on a different level if he moves on and plays in NFL. Or it's just a tribute to guys who come into the program and kind of wait their turn or compete for jobs without leaving when they don't get a starter's job right away. And I love those kind of guys. I love those kind of stories, because those kind of players are the ones that you want to build programs around. And when it's your quarterback, that makes it that much better. And it does just show you that that all the recruiting and stuff. I know it's popular with fans and stuff. And it's such a popular part of the off-season storylines. But that's why I've never bought too much into the 5-star thing. But a lot of those guys turn out. But the good thing is a lot of the guys who are under the radar also turn out. And that's what makes the game fun, in my opinion.
I agree. Well, Scott, we appreciate taking the time. You can follow Scott on at Gator Scott on Twitter. And we'll talk to you next week. Have a good trip out to A&M, my man.
All right, Shane. Thank you, bud.
All right, that's Scott Carter joining us on the Titan MR Hotline. I'll take our second time out of the program. When we come back, we're going to wrap this Monday edition up.
This is Shane Matthews. Thank you for listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning. You can also check me out on Inside the Huddle with Steve Russell and the head ball coach, Steve Spurrier. Tune in every Tuesday during football season on WRUF 98.1 FM, 8:50 a.m. at 10 o'clock in the morning, or find us on your favorite podcast platform.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility.
Area Rug Masters, your number one choice in Gainesville for all your rug cleaning services.
Meldon Law, where you matter most. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte.
Celebration Point Town Center, Center State Bank, Chris Doring Mortgage. Some of our touchdown sponsors are Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, TB Financial, Meadowbrook Golf Course, Dar Shakow Insurance, Pomodoro Cafe,
Big Mills Cheesesteaks,
MB Listing, Cornerstone Financial, McDonald's Gainesville, My IT Masters, Gainesville Neon and Signs, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie, Chick-fil-A on Archer Road, Aver and Smith Personal Injury Attorneys, Orange Theory Fitness, PRP Regeneration Specialist, and Dowling Signs.
Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to a Monday edition of Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. This Day in Sports is brought to you by Area Rug Masters, Gainesville's most trusted area rug cleaners. With free pickup and delivery, Area Rug Masters is the convenient way to keep the focal point of your room looking brand new. Call Area Rug Masters at 352-448-5999. This Day in Sports, in 2001, Barry Bonds hits his 71st and 72nd home run against the Dodgers, and it breaks Mark McGwire's Major League single-season home run record. Now, we all know that was tainted a little bit, but that's brought to you by Area Rug Masters. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll be joined by Buddy Martin from the Buddy Martin Show, and we're going to have Chris Doring, UF Hall of Famer and SEC Network analyst, does a tremendous job. He'll be joining the program as well. I want to thank JC for joining us, and also Scott Carter from FloridaGators.com. Today's show is a wrap, brought to you by Wrap Spot. Be safe, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.